To Brookline, which is just outside of Boston, to a really nice apartment there. I loved it. It had a big space in the living room, just big space, bigger space than on Marlborough Street in a brownstone, I suppose. And my bedroom had an office area and had a tree draped over, and it was just lovely for working. It was just a really nice setup. I took on a company, Dutch company called Exebia Labs. They were an offshoot of Exebia, and they wanted to launch into the US. And the good thing about having the Market Assist entity up online is that I could take on shorter stints of companies. So it was almost like I was like pitching myself in as a consultant, saying I can only do a shorter stint. So, but I could still up my title and salary. So I could say I'll go in as a VP for a year, up my salary from the company before, but it's only short term. So I could quickly move on to the next company and either up my salary and title again, but also meant that I had a good portfolio for a marketing agency. I didn't know which road I wanted to take. Did I want to set up a tech marketing agency, or did I want to go for bigger and bigger companies and try to go VP title, CMO title at bigger and bigger tech companies? That was my strategy anyway. So out in Brookline, I spent the whole year working. I literally worked for the entire year at night, weekends. I drove out to the office. I was out of the office a lot, or I was at conferences traveling around, or I went to Amsterdam to meet with the head office there. Very odd time, I went to visit my sister's friend who lived in Brookline as well, and had a tea on a Saturday morning. Or I went down to the reservoir and I ran around it, or I walked around it, or I think once in the year I met a friend of mine for dinner. She's from Cork and she lives in Boston. And that was it really. I worked the rest of the year. So with Exebia Labs, they're in the DevOps space, which is an interesting space, I felt. And I wrote a white paper for them in the first couple of weeks, just talking about the story from the CIO down through the DevOps team. And what the challenges were and how we stepped in and fixed those challenges with the technology. And I also worked with them on creating a really beautiful new visual identity, just seamless and like trustworthy, so people could trust them. They needed to be Americanized, and the messaging in America can be very linear, very simple, and very consistent. You look at any of the big players in the tech industry and they have very consistent branding. It seems like a small thing to say, but a lot of people, back then, it was a long time ago now, 15 years ago or such, people didn't really have, not everybody were up to speed on that. So it was an easy project for me to do. I just worked with them on upgrading everything, their diagrams, their collateral, their website, their ad concepts, and then creating layered messaging all the way from kind of the bigger message at the analyst level, and then all the way down to the product, and just making sure that we had the correct detail that to the buyer, and then getting it to the buyer in ways that they could perceive it. It's kind of like that in marketing, putting information or getting the information to people in ways that they digest information. It can be that simple at times. So it worked anyway, whatever we did. They were started to talk to CA about a possible purchase, and they didn't take the deal. I left at that point. They eventually got 100 million in seed. But I left at that point. I left because I wanted to move. I wanted to move on. It was a short-term project. I felt like it was another good example under my belt of what I could do on the branding side. You could see the before and after. And I wanted to go to either San Francisco or New York. I also left because I felt the VP of Products and the CEO were sort of reporting into the CEO or the owner of Exebia directly a lot of the time, and I didn't feel like I got the exposure that I needed there. So it didn't work for me beyond that year. So I started to, again, talk to a couple of recruiters, and I ended up with 4 job offers: one for a CMO job at BCube in San Francisco, a VP of marketing job in New York, a director job for a big company in the USA who had a massive marketing budget, the biggest marketing budget I'd ever heard of, and one other job. So I ended up taking the VP of marketing job in New York and planning my move down there.